بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم صلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Coming back to you with episode number 2 of Ummah in Exile. Today we come at the cusp of a historic election, I would say, that happened in New York City with Zohran Mamdani winning the ranked choice election against Andrew Cuomo, who's been a long-time establishment candidate in the Democratic Party, former governor of New York. Now, this doesn't mean that Zohran is mayor of New York. I know a lot of Muslims misunderstood that. It means he won the Democratic primary.
Correct.
And in November, in the general election, he's likely to go up against Eric Adams, the current incumbent mayor. It was I would say, a very celebratory mood in the Muslim community regarding Zohran and his victory. But today's episode is not necessarily just going to focus on Zohran. It's going to focus on the broader kind of political involvement that Muslims can have in Western society, right? Mm-hmm. And what do we espouse our Islam to here? What do we as Muslims attach ourselves to?
Yeah.
Who do we vote for? What party do we belong in?
Right.
If any party at all, what should be our political goals in the United States? And how does the election of Zohran Mamdani kind of fit into that, right?
Right.
So this is kind of the approach that we want to take today. And I want to begin by analyzing Zohran's election himself.
Yeah, I mean, it was honestly, it was a surprise that he won. I'm not going to lie. A lot of people that are, first of all, within my close inner circle, were very shaky about whether or not he would even have a successful campaign to begin with. I mean, it was interesting just to kind of go on a quick tangent about the entire race in general.
Right.
Towards the end, they did start releasing flyers of his beard darkened and his skin tone darkened as well. So it kind of, that kind of imagery and hearing that kind of stuff, that's what made me fearful of, he's got no chance, because a lot of people might hold these type of sentiments against Muslimin to this day.
They still do, yeah.
So then when it came out that, again, he won the primary for the Democratic Party, again, not the actual mayoral seat yet.
Right.
When it came out, I was at least very hopeful about the future, especially in such a diverse, area like New York.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't think any Muslim should be upset at Zohran's win. I think it's a big blow to AIPAC. AIPAC kind of tried to frame that entire race. And we know AIPAC. We know the Jewish Zionist lobby having their tentacles all up U.S. financial institutions, political institutions, intelligence, whatever you want to call it. You can call it a great conspiracy if you want. It's really not a great conspiracy anymore. Everybody has noticed the kind of game that the Zionists have been playing for the past century now, almost. They try to frame the entire race as Muslim versus Jewish. To be honest with you, Zohran identifies as Muslim, right? But he's not from a practicing family background.
Correct.
I don't know his level of practice. I haven't really heard much about it, so I'm not going to pass judgment on what. But, he's married to a relatively liberal woman. He himself is very, very, very far left in terms of social policies. He does not espouse social policies that are in alignment with Islam or Islamic values. We have to be honest here.
Right.
I don't care if your name is Zohran Mamdani or Muhammad Abdullah. You call a spade, right?
No, you have to be objective.
Yeah, and if you as a Muslim do not espouse Islamic values, then you don't espouse Islamic values. That's the truth.
No, correct.
Right?
Correct.
That being said,
they still paint him with that.
correct, because at the end of the day, the eye of hate doesn't care if you pray 5 times or not. They're going to loop you into the same thing.
Right.
Zohran is very secular, very liberal, very progressive. From a Muslim looking within, they're like, there's no way that anyone would think this guy would establish Sharia law in New York. I mean, just, but from your average Islamophobic lens, every Muslim is the same, right? They all have this hidden agenda to take over the world and
exactly.
all of that. And that's how they're approaching it, right? It's true, that risk is still there, very much so. But what does that mean for us as Muslims? Can we as Muslims succeed politically in an environment like this? I don't know. What do you think? I have my opinion, but
I mean, I want to. I guess to be political, I want to hear your opinion first.
Okay.
What is your opinion? Do you think that, like, let's just say, like, religion has to be the central deciding factor when it comes down to a Muslim's vote? Yes. Okay. Yeah. Explain that.
So I've worked in politics for almost 8 years now. This is a very toxic, filthy field to be in. I'm not a big fan of it.
We've all watched House of Cards.
Especially in the United States, in this Western environment that is completely void of any religious presence in politics, right? Mm-hmm. I believe that as a believer, you cannot detach politics from faith. I believe Islam is absolute surrender to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Absolute surrender. And whether that's in your family home, that's whether it's in your finances or in your politics, you have to surrender to the will of God, right? And I think within human nature, with human conception, no human being actually separates politics from religion. Our religion is Islam. We have a certain set of values that's dictated by our 1400-year tradition, scripture, and whatnot. A secularist claims that they have no religion, but their religion is secularism. Their religion is progressivism. Their religion is hedonism, materialism, capitalism, whatever you want to classify it as. Everybody has a religion.
The belief system, exactly.
Right? And they try to impose that belief system upon everybody else. Because that's how humanity works. To not see humanity in that point of view, in my opinion, is extremely naive. Humans have ideologies. What drives humans is ideas, belief, faith. Right? So when you come to me and you say politics is separate, I say you're stupid, you're naive. You don't know how human beings think. An ideology has to lead, and if it's not yours, it's going to be someone else's. Right? Politics is ideology. It's the debating of what idea is best for society. Yes. That's literally what it is. So yes, 1000% my deen, my way of life, my religion dictates my politics. That's why I'm in here, to serve my Lord, to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. People would hear that and say, well, because I think Muslims are more secularized, even though they may pray 5 times a day, than the secular individual in the West, right? A Muslim will be the one who tells you there's separation of church and state, and we have to. But Ted Cruz just last week said that his opinion on Israel was formulated based upon evangelical interpretation of Christianity. That's religion shaping policy of a senator. I guarantee you it goes way beyond that too. Congressmen, senators, local politicians. You cannot detach a person's value system from how they operate in the world. Yes, my Islam shapes the way I do politics.
I mean, in short answer format, I 100% agree with you. In the long format, I guess, to kind of piggyback off of exactly what you're saying, is I don't see necessarily the reason or the fault in having a religious foundation that drives an individual and drives their morals as well as drives their ethics. Now, of course, this should be stated that if a person's religion or if their personal beliefs infringe upon the rights of others,
right,
or chooses to demonize a certain group of people, I'm not for that. Does Islam stand for that? No. That's why I agree with you. That's why I'm so willing to say yes to that. Because again, I have to agree with you. I think that Muslimin nowadays, they choose to identify culturally as Muslim. It's a lot easier to just be like, yeah, I'm Muslim.
Identitarian Islam.
Exactly,
right?
exactly. It's just like yeah, I'm Muslim, but don't exclude me from X, Y, and Z, just to almost fit in. So that type of thinking will shape an individual's actions in a booth, a voting booth.
For sure.
And it's really interesting to see, though, the shift in how Gen Z is going to tackle religion when it comes down to politics. Because we understand the boomer generation to be this kind of hardcore, evangelical, really Zionist type of leaning population. Well, they're thinning out, right? That's what the geographics are showing. But as this younger population comes in, it should be noted, I read somewhere, I don't know if you saw the statistic, that there was a jump in the percentage of Christians in America from, I believe, either 2023 to 2024 or 2022 to 2023, from 21% reported Christian to 26% reported Christian in America. So what this shows you is religion is on the rise. It's on people's minds.
Sure.
They feel this wave changing. And it's influencing their daily lives. Just like how you said, Ted Cruz is implementing, quite literally as he said, legislation based off of a quote from Genesis, right? So if individuals are taking this stand outside of the realm of Islam, then why should we as Muslims be shy about taking the same stand?
Because we've been mentally colonized. We've been taught to fear our own belief system. Because this belief system that, as we've addressed before, challenges these systems of oppression, of abuse, exploitation.
Correct.
It poses personal risk to you, right? Therefore, you should fear it because it's going to create upheaval in your life. This is what the Muslim has been taught. The Muslim, the post-colonial, subhanAllah, I read this quote from an Algerian Muslim resistance fighter in the 50s. And in the 90s, he said, we managed to kick the colonizers out of our lands, but we never kicked them out of our schools. We never kicked them out of our textbooks. We never kicked them out of our radios, televisions, right?
Yeah.
So our mindset is so colonized that we've been taught to worship the systems of the outsider, the oppressor, and to demonize our own system and our own way of life. And this is, I'll say it unapologetically, the perfect way of life. This is directly commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Lord of all mankind and all the worlds, right?
Right.
So I'm not going to take man-made systems over that.
Yeah.
And I do want to address what you said about the rise of Christianity. And it's true. It's true. There is a rise in, I wouldn't call it religiousness. I would call it religious nationalism.
Yes.
This is satanic religion, by the way. Whether it comes in the code of Islam or Christian, it's satanic because it teaches hate.
It's manufactured.
It's manufactured. It puts a layer of religiousness on hate, nationalism, division, right? This is what we're seeing Crusader Christianity. This Christianity that is built entirely upon what? Hate of Islam. Seeing the rise of Islam in the West, seeing the rise of the spread of Islam and Muslims standing up for themselves. They're observing it and they're saying, I don't like that. I'm going to return back to my Christian roots. That's not godly religion. Godly religion is supposed to be loving, all-encompassing, right? Godly religion is supposed to be calm. It's not supposed to be hateful.
Right.
And this is the kind of religion that we're seeing in this Christian West rise again, and I've said this before. I believe the rise of Christianity right now is a Christianity that predicates hate against Islam. It's not a Christianity that seeks to reclaim its own tradition. That 26% of Christians, they're not interested in living a non-sinful life. They're not, I'm not speaking for everybody, but for the majority of, they're not interested in dressing modestly, right? They're not interested in stopping the partying and the zina, fornication, and
it's like a cultural.
They're not interested in stopping interest, right?
Yeah,
it's a cultural
Christianity.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's not religion. That's not godly.
It's like Christmas shopping, essentially.
Right. So, Islam, on the other hand, I read this quote, another quote by a Turkish scholar who said the West is pregnant with Islam. You know?
Yeah, it's
booming. And when you think about it, it's like, yeah, Islam is quite frankly rapidly growing in the West organically. But that definition of, or that parable of pregnancy is beautiful because nothing is born without struggle, right? So for Islam to come to fruition in the West, you have to struggle with the systems and the forces that are already here. And we're seeing that from this Islamophobia to internally dealing with how we as Muslims in the West are perceived, right? Yes, to go back to Zohran's thing was a victory against APAC. Maybe his policies will be beneficial for New York. I don't know New York very well. But I'm not going to take pride in identitarian Islam. I'm going to take pride that APAC lost. I'm going to take pride in that 1,000%. And as Muslim, we should back anybody who opposes. But I'm not going to take pride in someone who labels themselves as Muslim and promotes policies that are not Islamic. Yes. Because there's a category of what we prioritize here. For us in the West, our main priority is Hifzuddin, the protection of our way of life, our system. It's not Hifz al-Nas, right? Our lives are not in danger, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Right? You and I are drinking coffee, making a podcast. We're not under direct threat.
Yeah, there are no bombs coming down.
Correct. What is at threat, though, is our iman, our faith. And I will say this too, right? Because this is what pushes us to kind of have this sheep mentality and go all into one political camp. I caution Muslims against going to the far left. That's not organic with our deen, right? The right may be Islamophobic, but the left is imanophobic. That's where I'm going to leave it.
That was that was actually a deep little message there. The left is imanophobic,
right?
And I actually resonate with that because it's interesting because I actually see the greatest amount of pushback from left-leaning Muslims,
right,
regarding my faith. It's very interesting. Like whenever there may be a social gathering, the most amount of questions of why don't you drink come from left-leaning Muslims.
Yeah, of course.
And whether or not it's like a judgment thing that they internally feel or not, it is certainly typically from them that they don't necessarily want to see an individual progress in a religious aspect. Because they feel like it's a shackle. Versus the right-leaning Muslim is the one who's providing the shackle. Like they typically tend to be the physical manifestation of what is wrong, aka like the haram police. You know, like these guys or girls that go online and they're these keyboard warriors for Islam, and they got their sword in their hand, rushing towards the comments, saying like, "Your ankles are showing." You see, like those are two sides of the same coin. You see, like they really are, and it feeds into the whole issue, which I think also drives people away from wanting to vote for an individual who has somewhat of a Muslim backing as a Muslim, because again, there's a really weak connection to either their community, they have a very weak foundational religious background, and something caused that. Of course. There's always an inflection point in an individual's life that led them down a certain thought process, that led them down a certain road. There's always that 50-50. and how or why that person chose that path, subhanallah. But I think to again emphasize the point here, just to go back with Zohran, it is a very big win that I think we should celebrate as Muslimin, but we should also be cautious of it,
right?
Because this is not to say that we should be cautious of him as an individual, or his background or anything like that, because a lot of people are saying, because he's born in Uganda, they're questioning his birthright and stuff like that. That aside, I think that it is really important for us to still be cautious that just because a person is Muslim,
right,
does not mean that they are going to be perfect, right?
Or good, and for that matter, at all.
I actually wanted to ask you a question, okay? And
Sure.
and I feel like this is going to actually show how off the beaten path we are from majority of politicians, because I feel like I already know what your answer is going to be, okay? If there was a Muslim running for political office, but his campaign and his legislation was not to Muslim standards or Muslim values, okay, versus another individual who was, let's just say, non-Muslim, that had, for the most part, Islamic values in their legislation and what they wanted to pass.
Right.
Who would you vote for?
I'm going to explain it through a story.
Okay.
The Prophet ﷺ, this is from the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, he encountered an incident in Medina where a group of two men were arguing with each other, right? And the Prophet is observing from a distance, and he sees more people start to join, right? So now, an argument that started between two people became a tribal argument. And people who supported one guy, they were all from his tribe. They're like, we have to support him. He's from our tribe. And the other side is saying, the Prophet ﷺ sees this unfold. He steps in and he says, what's going on? And he cautions the people. Long story short, he says, this is not what the Muslim does. The Muslim does not take sides based on identity. The Muslim does not take sides based on tribalism. This is something that Islam came to shatter. Tribalism was an idol of that day.
Correct.
Today we have nationalism, identitarianism, whatever. It's another idol,
It's
right?
a new form of idol.
Right.
Exactly.
Islam comes to shatter that too. For me, I care about the values that a person is promoting. If a Muslim is promoting LGBTQ on my kids, first of all, I would doubt his Islam because he's denied the Quran at that point, right? Second, I'm not going to vote for him. If a Muslim is prioritizing something outside of the needs of his community, that person does not deserve my vote. His name could be whatever, could be Abdurrahman, right?
Yeah.
I could care less. Whereas if John Smith promoted values that resonate with my community, I would vote for John Smith, right? But now this begs the question that should the Muslim just be feel like they have to be forced into picking this divisive, polarizing field? Is there no way for the Muslim to chart their own space? Because I feel in this age, in this day and age, the democratization of opinions has led to people straying from religion, in my opinion, right? Back in the day, when you look at how governments operated, there was no democracy at the top level. So the average person was concerned with providing, with living, with taking care of his community, his people, right? They were not concerned with foreign policy or, right.
The world was smaller.
And it was more concentrated, right? Now the democratization of opinion, where you and I, we have no impact on foreign policy. Why the hell are we talking about it, right? This democratization of opinion has given room for exploitation of religious communities. And for political parties to polarize religious communities and pull them away from their belief system and attach them to theirs. Muslims in particular need to be very careful not to make political parties their God. They need to be very careful not to make isms their God. Capitalism, socialism, communism, pluralism, whatever the hell you want to call it. don't make that your God. You have a belief system that's been dictated to you by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Learn. Iqra. Read. Right? The first revelation that ever came to us. Read. Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq.
Some people say it's a command even.
It's a command.
Not just to the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but also through the Rasul to us.
Subhanallah.
To read.
And I think this is where we lack. We lack knowledge of our own faith and identity. And that leads us to misinformed decisions. And it was Imam Shafi'i who said that action without knowledge is foolishness. And a lot of times we see people acting without knowledge. Unfortunately, they're sincere. They're very sincere. But sincerity is not enough. Shaitan can prey on sincerity too. So,
and I would add to that, knowledge without action is hypocrisy. This kind of floats back to the first video where, again, we kind of spoke about the reason why we're doing this, right? And the whole meaning behind our podcast, and we're doing the action, right? We have the a'mad, we have the intention. Now we're doing the action, right? And I feel like a lot of Muslimin are shackled to the dunya, essentially. Now, this is not to say if you have work responsibilities, give it up. No, because people always like to think in these extremes. I've always noticed that Muslims always like to think in extremes when it comes down to applying Islam, because the way that they see the religion itself is, the only way I can be a Muslim is if I am Superman and I am perfect, or Superwoman. I have to be an impenetrable bullet. I have to be without flaw, 24/7, because that's what Islam dictates. Islam is very fluid.
Right.
Islam is not restrictive. If you want to know a restrictive religion, out of the 3 Abrahamic faiths, it's Judaism. The Orthodox Jews, when they wish to go and have any form of sexual relations with their wife, they're not allowed to have physical contact through skin to skin. They have to wear gowns.
This used to be the case
holes.
In Christianity, by the way. People had to
that's one of the more looser forms of the Abrahamic faith.
Yeah, but they had to do it with lights off. Right?
So that again, that tradition is still carried on in the Old Testament, aka the Orthodox Jewish faith.
Right.
So again, there's this restrictive mindset. It's almost like everybody has been brainwashed into thinking it is impossible to live as a Muslim, because we always hear words like you mentioned, incompatible. We need to take a step back as human beings who have rational thinking capabilities, who have the ability of free will, and just like how you said, who are living in luxury essentially. We need to take a step back and ask ourselves, how do we want to start living life? Do we want to just live life based off of our desires like animals? Because think about it. What do dogs do? What do animals do? Eat whenever they want, sleep whenever they want, drink whenever they want, fornicate whenever they want, essentially. Are we...
This is not the purpose of a human being.
No, of course not.
Allah tells us this in the Quran.
We should not be locked in by our desires. Right? So that is the challenge, though.
I agree.
And again, I feel like that unwillingness to accept, just step by step, by the way, Islam slowly into an individual's life, that is what drives them to, say, for example, not vote for an individual like Zohran Mamdani because of his background, because of what his name represents, because of his beliefs, whether or not he truly stands by them or not. It's simply because of his background.
Right.
So the tough question that I want to ask you is, what are the steps to go about rewinding this, in my opinion, brainwashing about Islam in one's personal life? And number two, how can we begin to make our community feel confident in voting for a said Muslim if they were to run?
Yeah.
What's the way?
Well, I think I'm gonna tackle it from a different angle, right? I think
I'm interested.
I understand why a lot of Muslims don't vote, right? But I will also say that not voting is manufacturing consent as well. You're giving your support to whoever wins, right?
That's
basically.
Fair. That's fair.
So I don't believe that not voting is an option. I think inna min a'malu bin niyat. Whoever you vote for with the intention that you do, well informed, based upon deen, you will not get punished for that, in my opinion. As a matter of fact, we know the outcome is up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are judged upon our work, our deeds. Okay? So our effort is what grants us reward, not the outcome of our effort. But regarding that question, I think the Muslim, especially the Muslim in the United States, has to ask themselves, what kind of system do we want to be compatible with, right? We have to find ourselves first and foremost as a community. We have to identify what the Muslim community means. What's the overarching goals of the Muslim community? What is the agenda that the Muslim community cares about most and pushes? And I've worked in politics, as I said, for 8 years. I've identified one key thing, and it's culture change. I would be told very often in the spaces that I used to work with that Muslims are not a monolith. Correct. Muslims are not a monolith when it comes to race, when it comes to gender. We're male and female. Not saying that there's more than that, right? Muslims are not a monolith when it comes to age. Muslims are not monolith when it comes to ethnic background, socioeconomic background. But they are a monolith when it comes to La ilaha illallah Muhammadan Rasulullah. That is, if you say to me the Muslims are not a monolith there, you've lost the plot.
Yeah.
Right? You have to be a monolith. That's what defines a Muslim. If you sincerely believe that, then you believe the entire system that comes with it. And you have to espouse it to your life whether you like it or not. Because you recognize it to be the truth. Once Muslims figure that out, and rewire their approach to living in the West as a form of da'wah. Because what are you here for? To make money? There's 100 Muslim countries. There's free Muslim countries now you can go to, quite honestly, and live a comfortable Muslim life. So you're put between two options. Either you're here to promote something beneficial to this society, or if you're here just to live in luxury and hedonism, your intention is wrong. Quite frankly, right? A lot of Muslims are native here now. They've been born here. They've been here for generations. What progress have we made as an ummah in America to push for the social betterment of this community? Now, I don't believe that comes through political parties. I don't believe that even comes necessarily through politics. I believe we've missed the first step to that equation, and that first step is dawah. How often do Muslims engage with the people around them? How beneficial are Muslims to their immediate communities? How much do they know their neighbors?
Yes.
Right? How often do Muslims speak about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How often do they enjoy the good and forbid the evil? Well, we don't want to become like Amish people or the ultra-Orthodox Jews in New York where we self-isolate in bubbles, because we have a social responsibility that we want to promote good. But we jump to the conclusion that this has to be done through politics and votes, and a lot of times that ends up corroding our own heart and taking people away from Islam, right? Yeah. When instead we have to tell people that no, we have a better alternative to what you offer, or what your political parties offer, or what this polarized system offers. Because let's be honest, everybody who has a set of eyes and a set of ears can see and hear that the American empire is in decline, the United States is in decline. This is not healthy politics, This is not the politics of a healthy society. Right. These parties and this it's the politics of a diseased society. The Muslim is the doctor. How do you heal it?
Right.
You don't heal it by joining the disease, either one of them, right?
Right.
Right now, Muslims in America politically, what have we been doing? Band-aid work. slap a band-aid here, slap a band-aid here, slap a band-aid here. How do we become proactive doctors in the society? Dawah. You have to reform your approach to engagement with society, that you are here to promote Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
You know, there is a interesting hadith about this. I don't know whether it's a sign of Yawm al-Qiyamah, but I know that this is a hadith from Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in which he stated that there would be grand masajid being built, but no one inside of it to pray.
This is one of the signs of the day.
Okay, then it was certainly a hadith about the sign of Yawm al-Qiyamah. And if that doesn't tell you the state of the Ummah, where everything is external, right? Everything is a show, right? But when you walk inside of a masjid,
it's empty.
No community, no bond, no kinship, no da'wah. I think that people mistake da'wah as simply you preaching to a non-Muslim. Da'wah is also you preaching to your Muslim brother. Da'wah is you checking up on your Muslim brother and sister. A text could be da'wah. A reminder to salah is da'wah. You see, so I agree with you that, again, not only have people lost this will and desire to spread Islam, not just through their actions, but also through their words, but additionally they have, in a sense, like completely abandoned it.
They've gotten complacent.
They have become completely complacent. We all have, though.
Of course. We speak of the Muslim in general, right? I agree with you. I think complacency is we live here with no purpose. We've blended into the rest of society, not saying that it's unhealthy, but in a way that is unhealthy.
Yes.
We've blended in a way that we've faded into it, that no one can tell what makes you Muslim. It's not the thobe and the beard, by the way. It's your akhlaq. It's your character.
Yes.
Right? Have we promoted enough of that? Or are most Muslims, even in America now, Muslims simply by identity? Because that's at that point, and I'm not making takfir upon anybody, okay? But at that point, Islam is not an identity. If you don't submit to the code of Islam, you're not Muslim. It's that simple. So how many do we really have? Not saying that the potential is not there. There is potential. And it is the fault of the community for not tapping into it. But we have to rewire this approach, right? And we have to be careful. Going back to Zohran and to everything. Don't align with political parties. Don't align with candidates. Don't align with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yes.
And make sure that everything that you do is in alignment with His code. Whether it's Zohran or someone else, it does not matter. This is the only way, in my opinion, that the Muslim can reclaim the honor that we have lost. We have to be authentic, unapologetic, and committed. And Allah will not change the condition of a people until they change themselves.
Correct. And there's nothing more profound than that.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah. Thank you guys for tuning into another episode of Ummah in Exile. This is us signing out. We really do appreciate you guys. Like and subscribe. Salam.